Hey guys, it's your girl BISI AKINS and welcome to Hi I'm Black Talks. This is a safe space where we can converse and speak to Black people about their Black experiences and how they've navigated their fields as a Black person. On today's episode of Hi I Am Black and I Am a Voice, I am joined by the amazing voice that is Karl Lokko. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm well, we're good. We can't complain.
Yeah? How's your
Yeah.
day been? How have you been? What have you been up to?
I mean, today I actually went for a lovely stroll in the park with my folks and with Lion, So, I mean, he just turned 2, as you can see. It's a giveaway, but yeah, no, it's been chilled. Ate a little bit of food, did a bit of reasoning, did a little bit of writing in my journal, and I'm here with you now.
Okay, so before we get into who you are today, right, do you mind taking us on a little journey of your life from the Genesis till now?
I mean, I'm pretty sure there was some Marvin Gaye involved, my No, I mean, I grew up in Brixton, South London. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory if you're familiar with the area. There was a lot of happenings, and I witnessed actually someone being shot at very close range, and I wasn't far from the shooter either when I was about 12 years old. And yeah, that was my introduction to gangland sort of London, the trauma. There was a lack of counselling. I mean, there wasn't any counselling, let alone the lack of it. And I just kind of adapted, adjusted, and kind of evolved, if you want to call it that, And yeah, it went from bad to worse. One of my best friends was murdered by my side the day before my GCSE exams. Another friend of mine, one of my best friends, was actually shot twice in the head in a shootout 2 years after that. I buried another young man a year and a half after that lived with me actually for 4 years. So he was more of a younger brother than a friend actually. And he was also murdered. And I mean, that was just kind of the theme. And I was in the mix of that. It was definitely a very dark place. I always explain it in a way that wasn't who my parents brought up. I came from a very loving household. Academia was exalted it was enthroned in my household. My mother was a teacher in Ghana. Her mother was also a teacher, and I actually, I had a fetish for encyclopedias. I was an avid reader from very young. I was actually diagnosed as I'm a child genius. I did my year 9 SATs in year 6, and got level 6s, which most people didn't even get in year 9, So it kind of seemed the world was my oyster. I could kind of be and go wherever I wanted to, but my situation kind of spoke differently, So I mean, by the grace of God, I was able to get out of that. I can't say unscathed, but I was able to escape, And yeah, I was left with a blank slate. And I mean, that level of being derailed is actually a blessing in disguise if you see it for that. The kind of expectations of society, my environment, my parents had all kind of evaporated. Everyone's just kind of happy I wasn't outside doing what I was doing outside previously, So it kind of gave me some space to really ponder. I became an autodidact. I learned, I read a book a week, learned 10 new words a day to change my lingual syntax. I ended up doing meetings for, I went to create the country's first therapeutic community gang rehabilitation center, which is actually what I spoke on my TED talk. And I mean, like, that kind of just got legs on its own and got a lot of traction, but I had to put that on ice because there was just some politics behind the scenes. But I mean, during that kind of expedition to make that manifest, I ended up coming in contact with what people will call the 0.1%, and life just being life, and me kind of winning the veritable lottery ticket without actually realizing I'd actually placed anything in the jackpot. I ended up kind of just getting raptured into that community, So I ended up kind of just being, I don't know how to really describe it. It was almost like a foreign exchange student, because there was a duality to it. We were both learning. Everyone was kind of learning through the other safely, So I ended up seeing how the other side lives, and I went there initially thinking I was going to meet people with gills and webbed feet and bled purple. But when I met them, they were actually human beings, you know, and I ended up kind of really falling for them, and they fell for me. And I mean, the rest is kind of history. I went on from that to kind of doing advisory work, consultancy, a lot of public speaking, and you name it, we're here for it, man.
Yeah. And I'm going to pick on a point where you said that from going from the gang life and where you were to being on the other side where it was at the top 0.1%, and you thought that they would be different, right?
Yeah,
But they were just human.
absolutely.
And we're in the
Very,
time right,
very human at that.
very human, right? And we're in a time right now where people are fighting to be like, we're human, we're human. Why are you treating us less than human? Why are you treating us less than human? You experiencing seeing those people and like, okay, they're human. Why do you feel like some people don't actually see that we as Black people are human too?
Yeah. I mean, how long have you got BISI? In all, like, I mean, this, I think most of us will map this to like the 1800s, you know, the classification of human races, you know, as white ranking one, Asian ranking second, and then Black ranking third, last, essentially, you know, and the dehumanization of actually taking that bronze kind of, I won't even call it a pedestal because it isn't a pedestal, you know, but taking that kind of last place and concepts of, I think the best way to describe it is with their limited science, they actually felt like they had scientifically proven that Black people were less than. You know, it was more than just their emotions. It was actually their science telling them that. You know, so in a similar way how limited science once perceived the world that we inhabit as flat, you know, and as a result you wouldn't want to venture too far just in case you fell off the other side. You know, they had that sort of thwarted and limited thinking where they actually perceived us as less than, and as a result treated us as such. You know, they deemed themselves and saw themselves to be more superior. And just as how, like, when the world was flat, they created institutions then accordingly. I mean, everything is racialized at the end of the day, you know, so every institution that they have created is systemically racist. It just can't be avoided because its actually origin story in the 1800s was that of kind of putting it in the perceived rank, you know. And we're at a time now where even though the science now shows that genetically between kind of like different ethnicities, we've only probably like 6%, which is absolutely nothing in terms of diversity. However, even though the science is now more better informed, we're still kind of operating from the previous racial schemas. You know, and schemas are the unwritten laws that actually inform the written laws, you know. So when you're trying to kind of locate, all right, let's find the racism, it's more in the thought, you know, it's more in the automatic associations, it's more in the implicit biases, you know. So when you're actually trying to find it, it's intangible, yet intangible, but yet you can see it tangibly in all of our lives, you know. Black people experience a huge amount of hostility, you know, whether that would be overtly or covertly, you know. So, I mean, in kind of bringing it home in regards to them being human and me actually dehumanizing them, and them probably thinking I was not human and an alien also, you know, hearing their superstitions and all the rest of it, and then actually coming in contact and being in proximity, and then realizing that, you know what, we have more in common than in difference. Feel as if it does initially take conflict for that to happen. You know, I'm not actually afraid of conflict. I think conflict is a pivotal piece to actually get into the pinnacle of co-creation. You know, so for me, it goes from conflict to coexisting, from coexisting to collaboration, from collaboration to co-creation, which is the literal pinnacle. You know, and I feel like the contention globally is actually ushering in and heralding in such a time. So, I mean, fear of the other has always existed. The only way to actually get rid of that fear is to by approaching the other as if they are not another, but
Mm,
acknowledging that we are one essentially, but definitely we don't have the same experience. I don't want that to be misquoted. We are
yeah.
one, we are not having, there's no uniformity in our experience. The Black experience on earth is a unique one, you know, and I have seen this world. I have traveled, I am well traveled, and I am telling you, the Black experience is like no other. We are actually globally at a perceived bottom, which is not,
Mm.
and has nothing to do with our actual capacity, but more about the displacement and the hostility we have received through the centuries, you know?
Yeah. And speaking about that displacement and hostility, right? And also the fact that the whole dehumanization,
Yeah,
sometimes I feel like it's like a lack of understanding on the other part. Same way you went into there and you didn't really, or you hadn't been in that space before until that moment in time, so you didn't really understand. You just went off the implicit biases that you had perceived or had been portrayed to you and you have received, right? Um, can you explain a little bit more of what the Black experience is of, let's say, a young Black man who there's so many biases, there's so many stereotypes of what the Black man is, what
yeah.
it's like to even live in that space? Why do young Black men, not all of them, but why is it that we have the gang life? Why is it do we have the crime? Why is it do we have the people that are working really hard to be entrepreneurs? What is that experience like? Because people that are outside it, they don't understand it because they haven't lived it, but you have.
Absolutely,
Could you
absolutely.
explain it to us?
Slim and heck. All right. I always kind of say, I say it poetically, but I mean it literally. Yeah, it's poetry is actually a guise. Yeah, the moment they realize that the gang conflict was my initial protest, then we can move the dial. You know, and the reason why I say that is because we ultimately subscribe to a way of living that any sane and rational person would know that this is not favorable. You know, it's not like you can paint a glorious advert on the television where you come and say, yes, come here, get bullet holes, come here, get stab wounds, come here, get potential life in prison, you know, and then everyone will give their money and kind of say, yeah, I want in, you know.
Mm,
It actually shows just how fragmented our society is. And gangsterism itself is a byproduct of the fragments. It's a byproduct of a broken society. You know, no young man from any social housing area creates gangs. You know, it is a concept and a pocket that exists already, that those who feel estranged or disenfranchised now on the outside and feeling like as if the running of society isn't one that receives them totally,
mm,
you know, or truly, they now see that as an attractive prospect. So we actually have to question, how bad can a system be that its young men and women are looking to such a distorted reality as an escape
escape,
from their
yes.
reality, you know? So, I mean, and there's no secret, I grew up in Brixton, aka Little Jamaica, aka a very Afro-Caribbean community, and where it definitely had, it was notorious for a lot of kind of criminality, but it was also notorious for its community, you know, strong sense of togetherness, you know? And ultimately, the Black experience is one where without your parents telling you, you know you're at a disadvantage. You know, it's one where you experience your mother putting her best I have a passport accent whenever she's speaking to someone that's indigenous from the country. It's one where you know you need to wear a particular smile to make your white counterparts feel more at ease when you're passing them in the street. It's one where you are not a stranger to a middle-aged white woman crossing the road when she sees you because she perceives you as the other. You
Mm,
know, it's one where the cultural discrimination is huge, where your passion and your articulation as an Afro-Caribbean can be perceived as aggression, and you have to don a level of whiteness or a flair of the European to be able to actually simulate, and you have to carry that unspoken stress with enough grace to actually be socially mobile. And then when you are socially mobile, you then feel, I mean, it's just, you know, it's sophisticated as an issue, you know, but the Black experience is unique, and it is one ultimately that is very hostile on this rock we call Earth. You know, so being a young Black man from a low income area, I mean, was very difficult. It was very hard. We don't really have a platform prior. I mean, a post George Floyd world has enabled us to be a little bit more vocal. You know, I had to speak more of the guise of classism rather than racism, because the Brits acknowledge, and me, I say Brits as a British man also, I see myself as British, that they acknowledged slavery in 1833. Did you not see William Wilberforce? You know, we did it way before the Americans, so we allowed the cross-Atlantic kind of shadow, you know, to be casted over here to make it look like we are in the shade, and we are not experiencing that level of heated hostility when we are. You know, it's a bit more implicit, but it's definitely very much alive, you know? Like, I go to organizations, and I don't say that to, listen, when you've been a demon, you don't demonize anyone. You know, I believe in reform. You know, I know where I'm coming from. You know, however, I go to organizations where the top tier, the C-suite, is 99.8% white. You know, there's hardly anyone that looks like me. You know, so, I mean, how long's a piece of string is basically saying how difficult is it to grow up being Black and a young man, you know, in this country.
And how do you navigate yourself or own who you are in spaces where, like you said, 99.9% of the people there don't look like you, don't sound like you, don't talk like you, aren't you?
Yeah. I believe in honesty. Yeah. So the streets was perfect. I mean, the stress levels, you know, some for some reason, I'm not too sure what movie has articulated this, but people feel as if people are choosing the streets as a lifestyle in terms of the ideology of gangsterism, you know, subscribing to that way of being, because they perceive that the people are lazy and that's easier. I mean, I have been able to climb in terms of social mobility, you know, in this realm, you know, the mainstream, a lot easier than the underworld. The underworld's a lot harder. Let's just put that out there, you know. Like over here, I lose a contract. Like, what to do? You know, it's not major. You know, like, in that world, a loud knock on the door could mean several things, you know, and it has meant several things, you know. And I describe it as myself. I introduce myself, as the should be dead. You know, I've been attacked. It's no secret. I've been quite vocal. You know, I've been cut on my face. I've been stabbed in the chest. I've been butchered in the back. I've been shot at on several occasions. And I always say that on the streets, they stabbed me with a knife and they shot me with a gun. But in the mainstream, they stabbed me with a gun and shot me with a knife, which is a lot more painful. You know, on an emotional level, the pain and the injury I have sustained being the only one in exaggerated rooms. You know, everyone goes to work and they're the only one, and I get that, and that's got its own pain, you know, but I am in exaggerated rooms and I am the only one, you know, literal palaces, you know, not like just metaphorically kind of, you know, and it does come with its own kind, it's a burden on some level, you know. However, that's not down to the people necessarily that occupy these spaces, you know, but it is what these spaces have been founded on. And so much of the kind of wiring that has been left kind of unchallenged. You know, that's why I'm not really holding bars with the conversations. My mitts are off, and I'll let you know that it is very hard, and they should give me a big medal. Medal of I mean, I gotta be honest, I have come and I've experienced huge levels of identity crisis. I actually never sent an email for 8 months after watching Get Out, the film. Didn't send an email for 8 months. I lived off my reserves. I didn't do any of my kind of day job, you know, and that was a film. And people would say, oh, it's a simple film. In the same way, they're like, oh, yeah, we understand that I'm watching a man being executed for 9 minutes is horrific. However, it would be like, oh, kind of like, just crack on. We've seen that now, you know. But I mean, I couldn't crack on after Get Out. Like, I actually watched Get Out and then got out. This is no secret. Like, for 10 months, you know, literally 8 to 10 months, no email was sent because I perceived an email as what kind of brought me into the mainstream, you know. So I literally stayed away from it, you know. And that's just to kind of show you on what level it's kind of taking its toll.
Yeah. And you said in terms of like seeing the George Floyd incident, the George Floyd murder, that was so graphic, so traumatic, like so much goes on in your mind. Like, how can you disregard life like that for so long and not have anything happen to you, right? And it created an uproar of distress, of rage, of anger across the world, and in ways that I had never seen in my entire life before. When people came out and there was like, we've got this movement, the Black Lives Matter, which was there before, but it was amplified so much more after George Floyd. And people felt like they had a voice, and that their cries were somewhat being heard and their distress was somewhat being heard. But then other people were like, but protests, riots, what are you really saying? What is that? What voice is that? And as you, as a voice, you're in these different rooms, you're in these different spaces, and people look to you as a voice. You have to speak up for and represent us as Black people, because you're the only one in the room. What is, or what do you think the voice is that we are looking for as a people? Like, what are we trying to get people to hear? Why are we screaming so much, and what are they not hearing?
Do you know what? I think it's in your soundbite, you know? We aren't looking for a voice, we have a voice. It's just the voice of the unheard, you know? We aren't heard, you know, and we aren't heard because we're not able to explicitly scream most of the time, you know. We have to quietly cry, you know, and that in itself is a labor, you know, and I think ultimately it's a labor of love as well. It's not like I don't actually trivialize anybody's input. I mean, if it's just because I don't know, like I'm just pulling things out of a hat. If it's because today you went to work and I mean, you wore your natural hair as a woman to work. Like, I mean, that for me could be a protest, a legitimate one. I mean, it holds, it's all compounded, you know? Or if that's because you put a black screen on your IG story, or if that be that you ended up speaking to one of your white friends and told them, look, this is what it is. I don't think you should actually say that. You know, I mean, whatever it looks like, I feel like it's all compounding to what will ultimately be taken by those who are in a position to run with it. So I kind of see it like the generator for what will be the laser point focus. And those who have the laser point focus kind of agency are those who are already in a situation and they've actually been on standby for such a move as this. You know, you're going to see them being activated. You know, I am one of them. You know, I have been poised, waiting for such a time as this, you know, to be able to actually say, you know what, this needs to move, or, you know, this can't happen anymore. You know, so, I mean, all the noise is valid noise. And even if it is unheard, I don't think that's necessarily your fault, you know, because I don't see anyone saying that the person that didn't hear, it means that the other person wasn't speaking. You know, we might say, oh, that's a deaf ear. You know, that's due to deafness, not due to them being mute, you know. So we know greater thinkers than myself have already kind of said publicly that riots is the voice of the unheard. You know, this is not a new saying, you know, so we know, and this has happened, it's not just this century. You know, they always act like riots when they see, I get so confused, like any kind of, you don't even have to be a historian. You know, riots is a feature throughout humanity, like throughout our history. It happens every century, you know? And I mean, so unless they're saying everyone is like, I don't know, low kind of trouser wearing, ganja smoking thugs from, I don't know, black communities from 200 years ago during the French Revolution or whatever it is. Like, I mean, riots is a fixture because injustice is a fixture, you know? So whatever language you find, you use that language. There's no judgment from me. I believe it's all compounding. However, it is going to take those who have already kind of been in the position, have been making the noise, like, for example, the whatever movements were already there that now it's been exasperated. You know, they have the opportunity. They've been given the platform through this misfortune. You know, so yeah, I do believe the time is now. I'm actually quite excited. As I said at the beginning, I believe that all co-creation must start at conflict. You know, we go from conflict to coexisting, from coexisting to collaboration, from collaboration to co-creation. And that is the pin. You know, and I believe in us as humanity, as a human race. You know, I believe that we have that capacity and that we can get there. You know, however, it's going to take some discomfort. You know, and we're there now.
And the discomfort in these riots and in this period of this Black Lives Matter and everyone having the quote unquote uncomfortable conversations about race and all of that rare, which I don't actually think is that uncomfortable. Like it needs to be said. It needs to be done. It has to be said. So it doesn't come into a cycle again. Yeah, because we've seen cycles, and this is just a big one. We've seen it in history. It's been happening. It's done happening, and it's happening right now. How can we, as a people, Black people, attempt to kind of break the cycle? What can we actually do? Not asking the outside. What can we actually do to attempt to break the cycle of trauma, the cycle of riot, and the cycle of everything? What steps do you think we can take?
Oh, you want to go there? BISI, you sure? Listen, I'm a student, yeah? And as I said, it's no secret. I have a veritable lottery ticket win. Like, that's what I call it, you know? What that's made me privy to the inner workings of some groups, you know? And even though the Black experience, and I say this and I won't quote me, is a unique experience and one that arguably has had the most kind of violence, had to endure the most violence in the last millennium. Like, I go as far as to say the last millennium, yeah? Just the displacement, you know, is just unreal, you know? So partially when they're like, yeah, but we know that that's happened, you guys kind of should, I don't know, mobilize, you know? Or you guys should unify. Unify with who? With the Black African Americans that think they're from Chicago. Like, I don't understand. Like, they can't, you know what I mean? Like, they've taken, or from the Caribbean, or from, you know what I mean? It's just, or what, from Africa. But I mean, it's all, that is what you call such a violent displacement, you know? So everyone is dizzy, yeah? So I just put that out there. But we're not the only community that has been left dizzy, even though our dizziness is unique, yeah? I have to say that, yeah? I feel as if a good friend of mine, Simon Frederick, he made the This Is Us, no, the new black is the new black. So
Black is the
yeah,
new black. And he did this. They gotta have us on Netflix.
they gotta have us.
They
That
gotta
was
have
it.
us.
Yeah. So me and Simon, we speak from time to time, and he's a great thinker, and he's been advocating actually for a word. You know, like the Jewish
Yes.
community, we have anti-Semitism. You
Mm,
know, where you don't really have a comeback for that. You know, if I told someone, hey, you're being racist, they'd be like, oh no, you're being racist for calling me racist. You
mm,
know, but you need a unique, because as I said, we're in a unique situation. And the
mm,
black experience on earth is like no other. Yeah.
mm,
So I feel like a word is appropriate and it's needed in order to kind of highlight the distinction of our situation. Yeah. That's for
mm,
one. Secondly, I can't help it. It's economics. I mean, for example, I've got many Arab friends, and they also acknowledge some hostility. You know,
mm,
like they're aware that some people refer to them as sand niggers. You know,
mm.
not but their coin has got them a seat at the table. You
100.
know, because coin itself can help influence politics. Politics helps influence policies.
Mm,
Da di da di da di da di da di da. You know, it just keeps on going, and its foundation is financial. Almost everything on earth. You know, so because they're able to inject, you know, finances, they're able to kind of create that seat at the table. The Jews also, you know, they were able economically to get a seat at the table and actually be considered, you know, and be able to kind of help navigate and negotiate the fairer treatment and the greater inclusion of their people. So I do feel like the root of it is economical. However, because of the unique situation the black people are in globally, we are also at the lowest social economic standing, you know, which is no fault of our own either. Yeah, this has to be said. No fault of our own, you know. This is colonialism that has done this to us, you know, not, you know, if you're getting me, you know. So I would say at the moment, to organize the vote, I would say the
mm,
black vote. I would say, yes, we make maybe 3% of the country in terms of the UK, United Kingdom. However, we make like 40% of cities and the major cities. So the black vote could be a pivotal vote for mayors to be elected and other kind of MPs and things like that. So I feel like if we focus the black vote, able to harness the black vote in a particular way, that can help move the dial. But essentially, it is economical. So it's almost like the gatekeepers and those that are kind of like the institution leaders, they do almost have to let us in. Like they do. Like, I mean, that is a part of it. You know, I know we're talking about independence, and yes, there is that time, but it comes to, there is a point where a people is so downtrodden, yeah, so marginalized, yeah, and the fact that everything on earth is racialized, yeah. I mean, even the areas where these businesses are situated means that we tend to have to travel further distance to even get into work. You can leave university with the same degree as your white counterpart, and your initial job, you're going to be paid they will be paid 26% more than yourself. You know, and I mean, that's just right outside, just right out the door, you know? So, like, I mean, that has to be taken into consideration. You know, so I feel like we need to do some lobbying, we need to harness the black vote, and we need to have this future stance and current stance that ultimately it is financial, and we need to economically drive forward too.
wow. And for the white counterparts or others that aren't black, what do you think they need to do?
You know, I've as I said, I have had the honor of calling friends a lot of families that have been liberators, you know, and emancipators. Friends with some of the Mandelas. I've spoken extensively with Nelson Mandela's wife, and Martin Luther King's family, and they say the same thing, that all of these movements actually did incorporate the counterparts, other races involved. They're not talking about a complete kind of exclusive, you lot stay there, we stay here. It is all hands on deck. As long as those hands are for this, they need to get involved. So I would say, ultimately, like, it is your duty. One of my friends, he's from privilege, it's no secret, he's a part of whatever they will call it, the 1%, white. I think some of his family was even the Grand Viceroy for India, which is ultimately the representative for the Queen when it was under colonial rule. And I mean, the moment Black Lives kind of hit, he sent me a message, and he was like, listen, I know we've had conversations, but I just feel like I need to reach out, and anything I can do, if you can, kind of help point in that direction. And if you're going to the protest, it'll be an honor to walk hand in hand with you. And let's really try and move the dial on this. I feel that that's the appropriate reaction. If we're not getting those reactions, then I mean, they can jog on. We still get this.
I love that. And lastly, to debunk, not even debunk, but to speak your reality, what is it like, or how would you describe the Black man?
Wow. Blimey, heck. Want me to cure cancer as well, BISI? Describe them. I mean, I gotta be honest. Ambidextrous as they come, deeply flawed, deeply, and much of that flooring is induced by trauma, so I'm gravely injured as well. However, like the poet Rumi says, the injuries is where the light comes in. So I genuinely believe that has afforded us a tenacity, a resilience, and an innate ability to transcend. I feel as if we are currently more than conquerors. Like currently, I feel like the fact that so many of our maybe white counterparts or other races have been so unaware of the burden we carry just kind of articulates just how well we carry it. I won't just put it to their ignorance. I'll put it to our, abundance. So yeah, I mean, strong, and I feel as if tired as well. Yeah, tired. Yeah. So Black man, strong, tired, resilient, able, traumatized, and magnificent. A Black man.
A brilliant cocktail, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed listening to Karl Lokko and his experiences as a Black man and going through his field as a Black man and hearing about the Black experience. I'm BISI Akins, and you've been watching Hi, I'm Black, and I'm a Voice.